Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Ambassadors of Hope. I'm your host, Charles Bender. We're so excited that you've tuned in to hear from local South Florida leaders who are making a difference in our community and region through our charity, Place of Hope.
Hello, I'm your producer, Maya Elias. And in this episode's conversation on the Ambassadors of Hope podcast by Place of Hope, with Rebecca DeEmick and Al Barth, we cover various topics and involvement with Place of Hope, the impact of faith on personal life, parenting and setting an example, the father's influence and role, church planting and integrity, faith during challenging times, Al's stories from working with Tim Keller, making a difference locally, and the exhortation to serve humanity. Please continue listening on for the rest of this week's episode.
So good morning, Al and Rebecca. Thank you so much for being with us on our Ambassadors of Hope podcast today. Would love to dive right into some of the questions that we have. And Rebecca, I'm actually going to start with you just because I know you better than I know your dad.
Okay.
I know you've been involved with Place of Hope for a few years, and I'm wondering if you might just tell our listeners a little bit about your involvement with the organization and share with us how you came to know about us, the work that we do, and how God kind of tapped on your heart to get involved with us.
All right. Well, my youngest son had started school full time now. He was in elementary school, and I knew that it was time for me to start serving, whether that was at my church or a nonprofit. And one of my girlfriends, Carly Altier, invited me to the Hope Bash as her guest. And my husband and I went. And after the kids shared their testimony and heard what Place of Hope was doing, I was crying, just hearing what these kids had been through and their circumstances and what Place of Hope was doing. And I was really surprised. I hadn't heard of it before because I've been in Boca for a long time. And I thought, wow, this is something I need to pursue. So I went out to campus, took a tour, went to a coffee and connection, and signed up to be on the next committee for the Angel Mom Brunch. It was the right time in my life where I knew I wanted to get involved. I do run a business and I have 3 small kids, so I knew I didn't have a ton of time, but I knew that it was important to tell other people about Place of Hope because I was surprised. Here I'm living. I feel like I know a lot about what's happening in Boca, but I didn't know about Place of Hope. So that was really what was on my heart from the beginning. So getting on an event committee was like the perfect way to start because I could invite all my friends and start talking about it in the community. And through our business, Elegant Child, I come in contact with a lot of women from all different circles and groups. And it's just an easy way to engage different women to get involved. Mm-hmm. And it's been great. I had lunch with you and you were able to sift through my giftings and really help me and encourage me to get involved with what worked with my life. And it was just a natural progression. I was on more committees and started engaging with other women, serving on campus where there was opportunity within my schedule, within my means of what I had to offer. Next thing you know, a couple of years later, he asked me to help out being the president of the Angel Moms. So I'm currently doing that. I really feel like I'm where God wants me to be. I do feel like my gifting is engaging other people, other women, getting them involved. I have a loud voice through social media and just through my circle of friends. So I just try to share what Place of Hope is doing because I really believe in what's happening there. It's not just a handout. It's a program that the kids get involved with. They move through and we're breaking the cycle of abuse and giving them the tools so that they can change how their future is going to look. And personally, why it has more meaning to me is because I did grow up in a super loving environment with 2 Christian parents who really provided every single need I had and gave me just a foundation of faith and security and peace and love. And I just can't imagine being where I am today without that support system. And so I look at these kids that don't have parents, and sometimes the parents were the abusers themselves. And it breaks my heart. And I think, wow, I need to share from this love and supportive place that I had and do anything I can to help support the mission.
That's great. And I know that we have appreciated the work that you've done and how you've used your voice. And I think that, the misconception is with a lot of busy moms that are out there is that they don't have time.
Right.
I don't have time. I'm too busy. And yet I think this is a great opportunity to really show your children, and we're going to tie that in a little bow in a minute, but to show your kids, what's important and let them see you serving and giving, making sacrifices, whether that's your time or your resources. And so you've been a really great example to so many of the other younger moms who are in the community in Boca Raton and the surrounding areas of what that can look like. Can you maybe address, what your kids have maybe learned as a result of you being a volunteer and being involved in a leadership role within a nonprofit?
Yeah, well, it's been an opportunity where I can let them see how important it is to give out of our abundance. God blesses us with everything we have. And it is important for us to be serving in our life wherever we're at. So much joy comes from that. And so Paul and I both serve. He served through his work, and we go out to campus, and we've been there for the ribbon cuttings, and the kids have helped before the events paint the feathers for the angel wings, and they donate their own clothes and their toys, and we talk about it, just of the situations these kids come from. We're very transparent with them about how blessed they are and how much these kids are in need. So it's a constant conversation that we're having, and they know that sometimes mommy has to go to events or do things, but they understand why. And another, just going off what you said about a lot of women don't feel like they have the time to be involved. One thing that is really cool is I kind of get to do two things at once, because a lot of my friends are serving at Place of Hope as well. It's also social. We have fun when we're doing this. It's a lot of times we get to do things together in groups with our kids even, so they get to see their friends there, and we're all serving together. So it's really nice that we can kind of have an opportunity to combine social and serving. It's a side benefit that's a lot of fun.
That's great. And I know that you've shared with me more than one time that this was really something that your mom and dad passed on to you and that you learned from an early age, and they set that example for you. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to have both of you here. I thought that was such a special, unique, relationship that you all have that's worth highlighting and talking about, because, we are serving so many kids who don't have a father figure or mother figure in their life. Yeah. And if they did, maybe they weren't the best influence. And that's such an important element to all of this. And so we have an opportunity to step into these kids' lives and defend the case of the fatherless. That's part of our mission at Place of Hope. But, your dad is sitting here and he's starting to fidget because he wants to talk and say something. So, but what I want, I would love is Rebecca, I want you to introduce your dad. I want you to tell the audience, this is my dad, this is who he is. And then we're going to talk to him for a minute, but I'd love to hear you.
I don't know if I can do my dad justice, but my dad is an amazing man. He's a pastor, and he was a church planner most of my childhood. So we were moving into a new area, and he was starting with nothing, building relationships, and starting a church. He was such a great example of how I look at God, is how I see my dad. This beautiful balance of absolute love. But I had a very healthy fear of him. He was strict for sure, but in such a loving way. And there was definitely expectations in our household and discipline, but it was never out of anger. It was always a controlled, loving environment. And I got to watch both my parents be in ministry since I was a little girl. And I went early on Sunday mornings and set up the chairs in the school gym where we were setting up church that week. And we were opening our home on Thanksgiving to people that didn't have anywhere to go. And we were doing vacation Bible schools in our backyard. And it was just all about building the church. And they always included us in that. And so my father, Al Barth, is a great man and has really walked the walk and lived out what it means to be a Christian in a I don't know how anybody does it better. I mean, he wasn't perfect.
Oh, come on. No, I was.
Oh, my goodness. Grab the tissues. So, Al, sorry, we didn't mean to make you teary-eyed today. But I know you must be really proud of your daughter.
Oh, yeah.
The work that she does in the community and the fact that she's taking that legacy and she's passing it on to that next generation. It's so great that you and your wife are here and you're local and you get to be a part of their lives, and you're so invested in your grandkids' lives. And I see you at the events too. I've seen all of you at the either the brunch or the bash or the pickleball tournament, saying the prayer. So I know the role that you play, and her life has been tremendous. She's told me about this, and that was, like I said, one of the reasons I wanted to have you guys both on here. But gosh, maybe you can now tell us a little bit more about kind of your background and where you got that from, because I'm sure that this came from somewhere.
Yeah, sure. So I was actually born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota. A family moves to South Florida, to Naples, in the late 60s, really to get away from the cold.
Mm-hmm.
I came over to Boca to go to Florida Atlantic. My folks ended up moving back to Minnesota for a couple of years. So I was very alone, and alone in a number of ways. I was extremely young. Back then, FAU didn't have freshmen and sophomores.
Oh, wow.
So I was 17 years old, and I entered as a junior, which was weird. So everyone around me was much older, much more mature, and I felt very isolated. And make a long story short, I came to kind of an existential crisis and ended up giving my heart to Christ. So that's when I became a believer. After my wife and I married, and we were in business for a couple of years, ended up feeling called to ministry. So I would do my education in a number of different places, and then would end up, as Rebecca was just saying, I planted four churches, one in Tennessee, two on the west coast of Florida, and one up in New York. That led me to, the last 23 years or so, I've been involved with helping to plant or helping guys create urban center church plants in the major cities of North America, Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
Wow.
But what led to all this, to get back to your question, was I felt when I came to Christ that the Father really loved me unconditionally. Sorry. So that experience of unconditional love from a father. And my earthly father was a little severe. It was a Germanic father that was very demanding, and I didn't feel all that much affection. I'm sure he loved me, but he didn't feel that. But when I came to Christ, I began to experience this love of a father that was unreserved. So that what that did is it created within me a response of both gratitude and love. So that's what has driven my life of faith, my life as a father, that sort of thing. And there was a good, solid, kind of disciplinary environment, within my home. And I think I carried that through, so we would have expectations of the kids. We would expect them to be quiet, be respectful, be loving, these kinds of things. And so when they were selfish or self-centered or whatever, we would discourage that and encourage them to give to others. So that's been the driving force of my life.
That's great.
We want to give a special thanks and shout out to our presenting sponsor, Crypto Capital Venture. Crypto Capital Venture acts as both a startup recruiting firm as well as one of the largest crypto communities in the cryptocurrency space, offering trailblazing content for over 5 years. If you're interested in crypto, you can join over 300,000 subscribers on their YouTube channel for the latest on crypto. Just go to YouTube and search Crypto Capital Venture and make sure to subscribe. Thanks so much, Dan, and our friends at Crypto Capital Venture.
Now, Rebecca, you have shared with me that your personal journey has taken you sort of through lots of different phases of your faith. And I know that your dad and your mom played a role in your journey, in your faith journey. And I'm wondering if you can share a specific memory or an experience that stands out, where your faith in God played a significant role in guiding your path, especially during very challenging times, and kind of how your dad walked alongside of that with you.
There's been lots of different tragic moments where my faith has grown deeper. I definitely accepted Christ early on and was involved in the church my whole childhood until we moved to New York for my dad's church plant in the middle of high school. And that was a really challenging time for me, where I had a hard time making friends. It was a very wealthy community and we were not. And I ended up just making friends with whoever would be my friend. And it ended up being a bad a bad group of kids, and I started to stray, and that continued into my college years until I had, just woke up one morning after doing drugs and partying and still thinking I'm a Christian and living my life for God, but I have this total other life that has kind of taken form. And just got to the end of myself and was disgusted with where I was and was kind of shocked at how did I get to this point in my life. But because of the foundation that my parents laid, I always read my Bible. So I always went to church, even in the midst of all the partying and I was just really leading these two lives side by side. Still considered myself a Christian completely, but was not living my life dependent upon Christ. And opened up my Bible to Ephesians 5 and read the passage of living as a child of a light versus the child of the darkness. And here I thought I was living as a child of the light, but everything that I read as a child of the darkness was describing my life currently. So that was humbling and turning point and a deepening in my faith where God really exposed my sin and drew me back to him. And that was from the foundation that my parents laid, our whole childhood, doing family devotions, reading the Bible together, praying together as a family, going to church, no matter what. And then recommitted my life to God, ended up meeting a man who was not a Christian. And I thought I would reform him and get him to know the Lord. And we ended up getting married quickly. And I think he ended up professing he made a commitment to the Lord, but I don't think it really happened in his life. I think it was just kind of so we could get married. And 2 years later, he ended up having an affair and asked for a divorce. And that was another time in my life where I just was at the end. It was just my whole life as I knew it was over. Here I was going to be a divorced woman. No man would ever want me. My dad drives down through the night, rescues me from Auburn University where we were living at the time, and was just by my side and just reminded me of how loved I was and that this isn't the end and that there is hope. And he was my rock and a physical presence there to just help me get my focus back on what is this life about, bringing worth and value to my life that wasn't based on my circumstances. And shortly after that, he brought me on a trip to Europe with him for 2 weeks. And I was a mess. I mean, I was just nonstop crying every day, all day. What's going to happen with my life now? I really didn't know what was going to happen. And we were meeting in city after city with these godly men, these pastors all over Europe, and just being by him and having conversations with him about forgiveness and how I'm going to have to forgive my ex-husband, how I'm going to have to forgive the woman he had an affair with, and just practically having this godly man, my father, with me to show me God's love through that time. I'm just so thankful for, because that time was so life-changing, just another deeper level of my relationship with God, and that he is my true husband, and he is my lover, and he is my identity. And that's what I'm going to move forward in.
Is it amazing to listen to her just share that part of her testimony and the impression that you made, not only the Lord made on her, but that you did. And that's hard as a parent when you see your kids go in one direction and that's not maybe what you taught them to do. And then, it's almost like the prodigal son, where you just welcome them back with open arms and you love them unconditionally anyway. What kind of goes through your mind as you hear her recount some of this?
Well, I mean, just on the, straightforward level, I just think we need to be there for our kids. You need to be with them. Even in the Bible, as Job goes through incredible suffering, there are friends that come and just sit with him in the ashes. And that's oftentimes what we need to do, is just be there in those dark moments. And sure, each of our children had moments at which maybe more than a moment, but a period of time where they were rebelling against maybe all that they had learned and thought and that kind of thing. And you just have to stay with them and hope and pray that they'll return to the things that you've taught them, that sort of thing. And what was really interesting for us, I think, was that pretty much after college, or maybe even during late university, with a number of them, our kids became our best friends, which was just a great relationship. When you're no longer under the authority of your parents, and you can make decisions that you want to make, that's when you kind of see the proof of whether or not they're on the right path and that sort of thing.
And what an awesome opportunity that you had to take her along with you over to Europe, as she said. So you were church planting at the time. What
I would do is I would help national guys plant churches in their cities.
Okay.
One of the funny things about that trip was I knew Becca was not in a good place, and it'd be good for us to be together. And ironically, I ended up finding an unbelievably cheap fare. So we flew nonstop to Europe, round trip, for $179 a piece.
Ooh.
It was crazy. And then we did the whole Eurail thing. So we were on trains together from this place, that place, and you would just have time to really talk and experience something different and be out of pocket, that kind of thing. And I think that was restorative. She was also reading a book by Rick Warren, Purpose-Driven Life, which I think really helped her sort through a lot of things. So
it's a good book.
Yeah,
it's a great book. Yeah.
I'm Amy Kasma, and I have been involved with Place of Hope since 2018. Well, I have to say my philanthropic career, volunteer career, really started, I guess, in college when I was in a sorority. I always volunteered when I was in college for, different organizations and programs. I would have to say the biggest influence is probably my mom. She always would volunteer at church, and of course, with my sisters and our various activities. After our father passed away of a heart attack, she got involved with the American Heart Association. So I always watched her volunteer as I grew up in various stages of our life. Place of Hope was brought to my attention through a mutual friend who contacted me to see if I was interested in doing a sponsorship for their Angel Moms brunch. Read the information, shared it with my husband, and we both agreed that it was something that we wanted to support. So my first exposure to Place of Hope was through an Angel Moms brunch. And I've been involved since then. And I think the organization really resonates with me because based on most of the volunteerism and philanthropy that we do is with children and education. I think about my own children and, when they turned 18 and they were in no way prepared to reach out and be in the world on their own. And it's amazing that Place of Hope does all these wraparound services for these children who have aged out of foster care and at 18 really aren't prepared to live on their own. I think what Place of Hope does is so inspiring, not only on the Boca campus, but throughout the other campuses in Palm Beach County and the Treasure Coast. They offer something that no other organization that I have been affiliated with does. I hope that the children here learn that no obstacle can be overcome. I have to say, most of my dearest and closest friends I have met through volunteerism. It has brought me so much self-esteem to help people. It enriches my life to know that I can maybe do something small to change somebody else's life. I feel sometimes that I get so much more out of volunteering and bring so much more to my life than what maybe I'm putting out there.
So let's talk about the church planning piece, okay? Because I know that's what you love doing and that you're traveling all over. You've been a catalyst for church planning across many regions, as you just shared with us. Can you recall a particular moment or a story where the importance of integrity was a defining factor in the success of a church planting endeavor? Or in your work with Redeemer City?
For the last 23 years or so, I've been officially employed as a catalyst, coming alongside of young leaders and helping them do what I would describe as, even though we say church planting, that doesn't mean a lot for a lot of people, but I would be helping them form communities of people that would love each other and try to figure out what does it mean to really follow Christ. And then also how to demonstrate God's love to the community around it. So that's the nature of it. So when you mention integrity or character qualities, the primary thing that good leaders of churches need to do is they need to, one, love people and really care about people. Mm-hmm. They need to be honest. They need to be authentic in relation to, none of us are perfect, so we have flaws and that kind of thing. So you don't hide from people. Mm-hmm. So even like with the kids, we never made them kind of conform to an image, if you will. Be quiet, be perfectly dressed, all that kind of thing. Just that's not who we are as people. So I think they had the freedom to kind of form. But out of all the churches that were planted in Europe, I think there was a couple hundred that were planted. We probably only had 3 or 4 failures, and thankfully, only one of them was moral. And then several of the other ones were merely because the situation wasn't right. The guy wasn't in the right place, or he wasn't the right leader, they're not the right gift mix, that kind of thing. But those internal qualities were just incredibly important. So living the Christian life is not necessarily easy. All kinds of challenges, and as a leader, you can idolize. And this may sound weird outside of church circles, but many times leaders gauge who they are by how many people are coming, which is the wrong criteria. And so keeping them from that and actually trying to help them figure out, how do I really live out the fact that God loves me and that God offers his love to everyone in the world, and demonstrate that. But I don't know if that really goes quite to the integrity piece, but there have been a lot of of amazing instances of great things that happened. So.
Yeah. And I can see when you're talking about that work and the leadership and the bringing together of people and the kind of helping people get started, I can see the influence that you've had over your daughter in what she does and her gifts and her skills that she's been using at Place of Hope. I mean, Rebecca, that's what you do. Like,
totally. I'm his mini me.
You really are. Like, you really are. Like that's your natural gifting, is connecting and bringing people together and building. And that's what you've been doing. And she had to learn that from you.
And I think it comes from a real love for people.
Yeah.
Really loving people is what makes that happen. And I'm thankful that I was made like that and got to see an example.
It has been interesting that both my wife, Rebecca's mom, and all 3 of the kids seem to be just incredibly entrepreneurial. They tend to be risk takers. They start new things. They enter into situations with confidence, and then they put all the pieces together, and then they work their tails off in order to see it be done.
That's great.
So I'm incredibly proud of Rebecca and all the things she's doing. So she's, I think she's very much personality-wise, she is that connector. She puts people together, helps them figure out, how they can serve Christ or serve an organization like Place of Hope and really make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah. So now we're past all of those things that happened a long time ago in her life, and you're here today. What do you think are, some of the ways that you are impressing upon her now at this stage in her life? I mean, I know that wasn't one of the questions we were going to ask, but I'm just curious. How do you support her in what she's doing at this point in her life?
Well,
as a dad.
Yeah. I don't know how much it's support or whatever.
I could say one thing.
Go ahead.
Some of it is the financial support of both.
That's true.
My father and my mother sponsoring events at Place of Hope on my behalf, so I can invite potential donors, potential people that want to be more involved with Place of Hope. So that's one practical way immediately I could think of.
Several other things that may not go quite to that, but so the church that I'm connected with now, Spanish River Church, and I've only been on staff for not even quite 2 years, but they have a whole track record of folks in that church that are engaged with not only Place of Hope, but other charitable organizations, kind of in this area. And so one of the things that we want to do as a church literally is promote people. Don't just give money to the church, although the church needs support in order to do its ministry. You guys need to be involved in all these different places. So seeing Rebecca or, people like Kelly Fleming or others engage, give, care about, that kind of thing is good. And so I think the encouragement of that probably relates to Rebecca, but then also, I continue to do work that maybe is an example or she learns from. One of the initiatives that I've gotten involved recently that I've just created is an initiative working with Native American and First Nations peoples of Canada and the U.S.
Okay.
And basically helping to change their social circumstances by helping create new business enterprise, which is all led by Natives, and Mercy and Justice is funded by corporate interests, church development all led by Native leaders, and that hopefully will bring about changes, because the very things that that many of the people that you work with, they experience unbelievable trauma in the home, unbelievable deprivation. So something's got to make a difference. Yeah. And so I suppose that's parallel to what Becca's trying to do here locally, is help engage with really good organizations that are making a difference.
Yeah, that's great.
That display integrity. That's one of the things that attracted me so much to Place of Hope, was everything I've been a part of with Place of Hope is done with transparency, with integrity. They use their resources to the best potential they possibly can. And it's an organization I'm really proud to be associated with because of what they're doing with what they've been given to really change lives.
We strive to, and I'm thinking as I'm sitting here listening to you talk too, and knowing the impact you've made on your kids' lives, your grandkids' lives. It'd be great to have you come and speak to our kids sometime at Place of Hope. We do leadership and career days. I mean, one of the things that's part of our program at Villages of Hope, which is the post-18, we're dealing with kids who have aged out of the foster care system, who otherwise might be homeless, single moms. And like some of the people that you just mentioned, I mean, they've had unimaginable trauma happen in their lives. And so some of the very basic fundamental things that we take for granted that we got from our parents, these kids don't. They've never experienced that. Right. And so when we do these leadership and career days, it's an opportunity for people like yourself. So I'm going to call you.
Feel free to do so.
To come in and just speak some life into them and to, share their life experiences. And in some cases, I mean, that can involve, some area of business or expertise that you have that, just might plant the seed in them to have an interest in taking a look at doing something different. Because I think too, a lot of these kids lack direction. They don't really know what they want to do. They haven't grown up in a home where they saw a mom or a dad, basically set a good example. And Rebecca watched you do what you did for such a long time. And she may not be planting churches, but she's planting good seeds in her community. And she's making an impact on other people around her, not only just for the kids at Place of Hope, but in the lives of these other women. I've seen how you've done that too. And that's really remarkable. I think it's been a great way. One of my goals has always been to try to give women, basically a platform and a place where they can come and they can use their God-given gifts and their abilities that I think so oftentimes as moms, we put them up on a shelf. We forget about them because we're so busy with our lives and our kids and our husbands and other priorities that we forget, to use them. So I just went like all around. That was a lot,
but you're the gift finder.
Well, try to be. Okay. So I know that you worked with Tim Keller, and I know he recently passed away, and Rebecca sends me podcasts and different sermons to listen to, that she thinks that I would enjoy. But tell me what that was like working with him.
I first met Tim when he was quite young, and nobody knew who he was. Quite young, I suppose he was probably 30s. But there were a group of us, kind of young Turks, so to speak. We were going to set out to change the world. We were all late 20s, early 30s, or something like that. And one of my buddies had heard Tim give a presentation on mercy ministry. This is long before he goes to New York, and he comes out away from this and he said, this guy's really interesting. He's got a really interesting perspective on things. We need to start following him. So Tim ends up becoming a friend of a number of us. And then he would go to New York in 1989, he and Kathy. Honestly, most of us who were his friends thought he will fail. New York is the place that breaks ministers in half. So we'd already tried to plant a church at one point, the denomination, and it failed utterly. So Tim's going to walk into Manhattan, one of the most dense, powerful, arrogant places in the world, and how in the world do you start a church in the middle of a place like that? So even though we loved him and we thought he was really smart, that kind of thing, the thought was, man, better you than me. I can't imagine, so let's watch. And then what was crazy was the result of both his primary work, he and Kathy really trying to figure out how to contextualize ministry for particularly the Manhattan situation. And I think there was a special outpouring of the Spirit in the first 3 years. They saw about 1,000 people come to Christ very, very quickly. People that were coming from really non-Christian backgrounds. So then a few years later, Tim asked me if I would come up and plant a daughter church of that church. And this is 1995. And so that's the one Becca was referring to when we moved to New York. We began meeting together with 3 guys that were starting the first 3 churches. We would meet with either Tim or one of the other pastors on staff there, just trying to figure out how to do work in the city. And what took place, because even at that time, Tim really didn't know how to plant a church in a city. So even though he was 6 years into it, it had been just this incredible ride, and they're trying different things. And, so that actually gave him the opportunity to begin to think through and articulate, well, what had they done that had really worked? We're sharing them together. So I'm just, I think, 2 years younger than Tim, something like that. It was a group of us, that were talking together. So it became a friendship that was very fruitful in a lot of ways. And then when we created what was called the Church Planting Center in 2000, I left the church that I planted and came on board with that. And so we had a very close relationship, not necessarily intimate. Tim is more intimate in his preaching than actually in relationships. He's actually very introverted. So it was great, having this good relationship, good working relationship.
Sure.
It was always profitable, I think, and it worked both ways. But it was an incredible privilege to actually take what he had been learning in New York and to be able to help others across the world grab a hold of those principles and then literally affect the world for Christ.
Amazing. So. And you said that was a difficult market to break into. I would imagine that some of the cities that you might have gone to in Europe might have been even more spiritually deprived.
Oh yes, very definitely. Yeah. It's a weird dynamic, and I don't know how much you want to hear about this kind of thing. But one of the things that we discovered, I suspect, is the way to put it, is people living in these large cities, globalized cities, are actually more like each other than they are like people in the countryside. So if you take somebody from Manhattan and somebody from Hong Kong, they're going to have all kinds of commonalities. But if you take somebody from 100 miles west of New York in Pennsylvania and somebody that's 100 miles inland from Hong Kong, there's almost no shared, similarities. But Hong Kong, Paris, London, Singapore, all these different places, they all speak the same language. They're all financial centers, all those kinds of things. And for the most part, they've been the most resistant places to the gospel. And of course, they're wildly, multi-ethnic, all kinds of cultures. They're coming together. So it was interesting having that opportunity. I think it was a moment in time where the whole world was becoming globalized, and so the kinds of things that we were learning actually would work in other places.
It's really fascinating how it's, literally you can watch the things that the Bible said would happen coming to life, and the whole world kind of just being exposed to all of this. And you can see it now because of all of the technology and everything that's in front of us, which is pretty incredible. But I think we have an opportunity in our own backyard to make a difference. Yes, we need to go into all the earth. But I think for those of us who can't do that, we can make a difference right where we live and we work and we play and we raise our families. And I think that your family has certainly demonstrated that in Boca Raton in South Florida. You've been just instrumental in creating such incredible awareness in your church family, in the community, and the work you've done for Place of Hope. And we appreciate the impact that you've made on Rebecca's life, because she's making a difference in the lives of so many other women and families that are around us. And in turn, because of the work that she does and the impact that you've made on her as a father, that's making a difference for the kids that are living at Place of Hope. And I really just wanted you all to know that.
Thank you.
Good.
It's a privilege. Absolutely.
So I just turned 70. And
happy birthday. Late happy birthday.
It was a month ago. But,
okay, well, that's still.
But so in my mind, and this may be a weird way to think, but I think I've got 12 or 15 years left to actually do a number of things. And so I'm even with this Native American thing that I'm working on, this is all fun. And but there is tremendous potential in these communities of people that are 60, 62, 65, 68, and to use a lot of the wisdom and the knowledge and the experience and their power, both financial as well as in terms of, learning, that kind of thing, to impact people's lives. And even though I like to play golf, I really don't play much golf anymore, but I love to play golf. I can't imagine playing golf 3 times a week and then sitting around and reading novels and just what? No. Man, so the very thing that Becca was talking about, as people get involved, making a difference in other people's lives, what they do is they form really good friendships with other people, which are life-giving, and you make a difference. So I would want to challenge people to say, hey, listen, if you're going to retire early, or even if you're retiring late, think about using the years you have to serve humanity. It's actually much more life-giving than just kind of taking a vacation to this place or that place. Nothing wrong with those things.
No.
We have the right to do those things, but we ought to be trying to figure out how can we fulfill God's ultimate purpose for us, no matter what faith you're coming from.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. Yeah. That's a great note to end on. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
Yep,
Absolutely.
thank you.
We appreciate all your wisdom.
Thank you for listening. Please be sure to subscribe and share with your friends so you don't even miss a thing. And if you really gained value today, please be sure to give us a 5-star review so, of course, we can be put in front of more listeners. For details and show notes about today's podcast and how you can connect with and support our guests, please go to placeofhope.com/podcast. And please don't forget to email us at pohpodcast@placeofhope.com. And for sure, follow us on social media. Ambassadors of Hope, placing hope in a child's future.